So I'm a strategic napper in that I if I feel the urge in the mid-afternoon, I just give into it and I nap, and I set my alarm for 23 minutes because it takes me about 3 minutes to fall asleep. And then I'll wake up and I feel emotion. And for me, a big part of it, especially when my children were young, was it just gave me the ability to emotionally regulate.
Welcome back to the Balance Boldly podcast for ambitious women in business and a few brave men. I'm Naketa Ren Thigpen, your host and balance and relationship advisor, partnering with you to change the narrative so we can amplify intimacy within and across your relationships, and you can finally have the freedom, flexibility, and confidence to thrive in work life and in love. Here we are, season 22, deep in the throes of my favorite season ever for so many reasons. And if you are new to the Balance Boldly podcast, then you probably don't know why, but I'm about to tell you. And if you are a avid listener, for lack of a better term, thank you for coming back as usual. And you already know that this theme is my number one guiding principle, personally and professionally. It is the lighthouse of my life. So I'm really excited to continue and to bring you experts that really do stand in and represent everything that the season is all about, which is fully living what you teach. It is so crucial. And again, if you have not learned this from all that 2020 has brought to us this year with this paradigm shift of shattering expectations and shaking up things that we thought were going to be our plans for 2020, and the universe laughed at them. Ha 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 ha. No, you will not be doing that. You will be doing things different, perhaps even better. Then you already know how important it is to really stand in your truth and be in touch with who you are, the bad and the good, so you can make effective changes and be able to cause those ripples in the universe that we all hope to want to be able to do. So let me get right into it and welcome Dr. Sarah McKay. She's the author of the Neuroscience Academy, a presenter of ABC Catalyst, and the author of the Woman's Brain book, The Neuroscience of Health, Hormones, and Happiness. You already love her, right? I know, I already love her too. As a neuroscientist and science communicator, Dr. Sarah McKay specializes in translating brain science research into simple, actionable strategies that the layperson can apply in their daily lives. After 5 years of medical research in Australia, Dr. Sarah hung up her lab coat to focus on science communications. She's hosted an episode of the ABC's flagship science series, Catalyst, and we could not be more excited that she carved out time, which is really, really early in the morning for her compared to the time it is for us here on the East Coast in the United States. So be able to just come and partner with us to share her journey and her story and make sure you know that there are real people out there doing real things and standing in their real truth. Dr. Sarah McKay, welcome to the Balance Boldly podcast. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you. Thanks for the lovely intro.
You're welcome. You are amazing. And I would love for you to just share a little bit more about what you're doing in the world.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I am a New Zealander, and I live in Sydney, Australia. So as we say down in this part of the South Pacific across the ditch, I had a really fantastic upbringing, both the part of the world I grew up in and had a really loving, warm, nurturing family, which I am eternally grateful for, because I think that has just given me such a foundation to do the things I do. I was one of those kids that always had my head stuck in a book, loved learning, and I think that love of learning has carried through with me, and I kind of think it's getting stronger. Like I'd still just really like to spend all day reading books and doing absolutely nothing else except maybe having a cup of coffee or walking my dog. I went off to university and met and fell in love with the subject of neuroscience, and I had a sense then that if I understood a little bit about how the brain worked, I'd get this great insight into human behavior, why we think and feel and do the things we do. And I've spent about 25 years working in neuroscience, both in the research lab and running my own business, teaching people a little bit more about the brain and neuroscience. And it's really, I suppose, if I had to say my guiding light or my North Star, I just love learning, and neuroscience is the best discipline for that, because it is so broad and it is so deep, and there is still so much we don't know. Every single day I get to read a paper or hear an insight or learn something new about the brain that I can, kind of I just get so excited when I find out something new like that. That love of learning has honestly carried me through. And so now I've built a business and a career really about sharing all of the interesting things that I learn with other people.
No, I absolutely love it, especially considering that one, you are a nerd, and I'm about that nerd life too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nerds make the world go round,
We
man.
do.
Um, which is incredible. So I'm curious, all that you know about the brain, right? Like in all of its impact on our hormones and our health and our happiness, which is what your book is about, in the most direct way. Have you come across in your 25 plus years of being an expert and a student of neuroscience, have you come across any particular reason why so many people are just struggling with things like imposter syndrome or being able to just be honest and authentic with who they really are?
Oh my goodness. I remember when I first felt imposter syndrome. So I am a Kiwi, as I said, grew up in New Zealand. My parents left school when they were both 15. So I had never really met anyone who went to university before, except maybe my GP, my doctor and my dentist. And then I headed off to university. And so I sometimes hear that you can't be what you can't see, but somehow I ended up at university. My parents were like, you want to go where and do what and study what? Luckily, they were fully supportive of that. As I say, I studied neuroscience, and then I won a scholarship to Oxford University in the UK, which, when you think about the fact that my parents left school at 15, is really quite extraordinary. But I suppose I was doing what I loved, which was neuroscience. But I landed at Oxford University, this kind of Kiwi kid, and I tell you what, if you're going to suffer imposter syndrome, it is somewhere like that. The people were just extraordinary that I got to know, and just everyone there was not just good at what they did, they were passionate about what they did, and they did everything that they did really well. And it was an extraordinary place to live. But of course, it's just such a natural consequence of living and working in a university like that, is that you have imposter syndrome. Everyone else around me is going to figure out that I don't belong. But what was really interesting was, as soon as I learned what imposter syndrome was, it kind of went away. And I think, I don't remember who was talking to me about what it was, but as soon as I heard it was a thing, it's almost as if I had given it a name and I could understand its origins. I realized it was quite a natural human reaction. It's a natural human way of thinking and feeling and being, and almost something that wasn't quite so special and unique to me. And I think maybe that's what I've learned about studying neuroscience all these years, is sometimes we can be so busy thinking about ourselves and self-reflecting and kind of navel-gazing that we almost think that we all are incredibly different and special, but we think, I'm so special, I'm the only person that's ever thought about this before, I'm the only person who's ever experienced imposter syndrome. And then it's like, actually, you know what? It's quite normal. It's to be expected. You're not that unique. It's just a natural part of the human condition that I suppose we're social creatures. We're always kind of measuring ourselves, engaging ourselves against what other people are doing. And for me, having an understanding that that was a natural psychological consequence of who I was and what I was doing, in a way almost kind of removed the emotional response to it and enabled me to look at it in a very kind of dispassionate way. And that may sound a bit kind of mechanical, but I think that's one of the great gifts studying neuroscience has given me. It's enabled me to kind of stand back and be quite thoughtful and analytical about a particular situation or a response to a situation, and go, okay, that's kind of just what humans do, and enables me then to kind of work my way through that. And it was almost like once I heard it was a thing, it kind of just disappeared.
Yeah, I get that. You took the power away from what the feeling was that was over you when you were kind of comparing and doing the measuring stick thing, not feeling like you were enough or that you were belonged. And once you were able to check, okay, what this is normal, you
Mm,
literally took the power out of it by
yeah,
applying
yeah.
that normalcy.
And
Yeah.
then if it's normal, that means everyone else is kind of thinking it too. And so that means you're less kind of strange. And I was like, oh, we're probably all secretly thinking and feeling this. And of course we were. And then you can't have imposter syndrome if you're all feeling it, right? Because you're all your imposters. And so I suppose I've learned that maybe it's just a type of cognitive therapy in a way. It's always
Mhm.
enabled me to stand back and kind of almost look at it in a very scientific reductionist way, which is a useful tool in lots of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a really powerful way to sit back and do it too. I was actually having a conversation with some wonderful women earlier today, and we kind of dovetailed into imposter syndrome, just, where all of us are coaches and consultants, and we all come from various backgrounds. I'm a psychotherapist by background, and they came from the corporate world, and we were able to just talk about how it comes up in for everyone, to your point, like, it doesn't matter where you are in life, or if you're doing a new program, new division, or going into a new venture, it kind of comes up. Even if you know that you're an
Mm,
amazing person, even if you've already
yeah.
accepted that, it can pop up. But where some people get stuck in it is, the normal kind of fair question when you're working on something new, or you're going to college or university, or you're doing
Mm,
something new is, am I ready for this? Do I
yeah.
have the right supports? Do I have everything in place? It's a very fair risk assessment question, right? Like, to make sure that you can at least be aware of potential challenges that might come up if you hadn't done that risk assessment. But people get stuck in it and they go the other way. And instead of saying, okay, do I have these supports? Am I ready? What
Mm,
do I need to be successful in whatever this new venture is?
mm,
They start to back into this insecurity of, oh, I'm not ready.
yeah.
Oh, no one will ever trust me. I'm definitely not good enough for this.
Yeah.
And then they slide right down that hill. And I wasn't sure if there was something to that wiring that
Yeah.
we.
Yeah. Well, I think if we think about it, imposter syndrome is really about us and other people. And
Mhm.
probably more than most people realize is so many of our decisions and thoughts and feelings and emotions and ways of being are around our interactions with other people. We humans are the most social creatures. Our brains kind of evolved to the point that they're at because we need to be part of a tribe. And one of the most terrible things that could happen to us, whether that be an imagined or a real thing, is to be rejected from the tribe, to be separate from the tribe, to lose people we love. And imposter syndrome really kind of feeds into that because it's really about everyone else is a member of this very clever, intelligent, capable, successful tribe, and perhaps I don't quite belong. So really, it is this sort of deep rooted, hardwired, if for want of better language, need that we have as social creatures to be accepted and to be wanted and to be seen. And if we are perhaps venturing somewhere new, we think maybe I'm not going to fit in. My social brain needs to connect with others, and what if they don't want me? What if they don't see me? And that, I guess, is where a lot of these emotions come from. They come from this uncertainty about being accepted. And we see that at every point through the lifespan. A newborn baby, what does it need more than anything? Well, of course, it needs food and water, but it needs love and connection and interaction. We see it with little children. They're developing friendships. We see it exquisitely when we look at, and I have boys who are 10 and 12, so that phase of adolescence as they're kind of going from childhood into their teenage years. What is more important to them than anything? Well, I know for my 12-year-old, it is not me anymore. It is not really my husband either. It is his friends. And the most important thing for him is to be in his herd of boys and to be accepted and part of them and connecting with them, whether it be via TikTok or Fortnite or out on his bike. He's we just want to be part of other people's lives, and our lives are intimately entwined and connected with other people the whole way through the lifespan. And if we look at it from a purely biological level in terms of our health, and this is what I discovered writing my book, was the greatest influence on our health, where the greatest vulnerabilities lie, and also where the opportunities are is around our interactions with other people. And if you have a lonely person, there's nothing illness and disease likes more than to get its teeth into a lonely person. It is one of the strongest indicators of good health, and particularly good mental health, is being connected with others. So that's why I think that these feelings of self-consciousness, imposter syndrome, we might call it, is such a natural consequence of being human. And if you can sort of understand that it's not a fault, it's not that there's something wrong with you, it's just that you're not strong enough and you don't trust yourself. You just kind of want to feel part of everyone else. And that's for me, that kind of is, whenever I learn these kinds of facts, I find it quite healing. I think, it's quite natural for me to think that. It's quite natural for my son to not want to talk to me. He's just being a 12-year-old, and it's, instead of catastrophizing it or layering all these emotional responses over it, I can go, okay, that's kind of normal and natural. How are we going to kind of work our way through this?
Yeah, absolutely. You can depersonalize it and not be so hypersensitive to it. And you're so right. Like, most of us have a visceral, especially as women, for sure, which is most of our listening base are women. We have a visceral need for community, whether that community is 2, 3, or 4 other people, or whether it's 500 other people. But we do have a visceral need for that.
Yeah, and
we're wired for it.
It's 2020, and we've learned a lot as humanity has learned a lot this year. And what have we learned about, like, how painful and the exquisite pain and torture that comes from being separated from other humans. And we've tried our best. Thankfully, this pandemic in 2020 happened when we could connect digitally, like we even are now. But it's just shown us, that fundamental need to connect, and the consequences. We don't probably yet know the full consequences, especially on young people's mental health and well-being, and what some of these outcomes are going to be, by the fact that we have, to keep ourselves safe and other people safe, had to just spend time apart. It's a really unfortunate experiment, but I think, we can reflect on that as well and go, wow, what we need is other people.
Oh, absolutely. Healthy other people, right?
Yes.
Like,
we all want to be healthy. Yeah. We want to give each other a hug again one day.
Yeah, definitely healthy other people. I think because we both know that children are extremely resilient, the children who are supported and who are allowed to be heard, right? Like, that don't live in situations or within cultures where they're not allowed to share their feelings or speak their mind or share their anxieties without being told to button it up, shut it up. You don't have any problems. You're just a kid. What do you know? That kind of very negative language that unfortunately a lot of our children today are dealing with, that may not have the most supportive families or composites around them. And when I say composites, I'm including some of their teachers, right? Not everyone really speaks life into the children, but those who do receive it, I think, will blossom. And they will absolutely have scars from this time, like many of us have, but they will be beautiful scars because they will have remembered the good things that happened in the midst of all the kind of chaos that was around them. And the children who don't have that, I think, are going to they're going to teach our world a bigger lesson. So I think, as individuals, need to be very well intended in terms of their intention that we take on making sure that even if we're not related to those children who were not as protected and didn't have the healthiest composites around them, that we find ways to participate in pouring into them in some ways.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think so much of the focus for parents and society in general around kids has been online school, homeschool, how we're going to keep the classroom going. And absolutely, that's really important. And it gives structure and it gives routine and it gives a sense of normality. And we've almost, because of, digital technology, been able to kind of carry the academic learning on. But those kids that have missed out on being able to just be kids with each other without parents kind of, having to intervene or having to framework that in some way, it's going to be really tough for them. One of the decisions I made really early on in this pandemic, and I'm very lucky that we could make the decision that we did, because of just by virtue of the fact where we live, even where we live in Sydney, that we're surrounded by a lot of bushland, was that we let the kids have one or two friends that they were allowed to play with outside on their bikes. So they were like socially distanced. But for me, the fact that they, so long as they laughed every day, for me, there was a greater risk. And I'm lucky that we could say this because we haven't had a lot of community transmission in Australia. But for me, there was more of a risk to their mental health and to feeling socially isolated. So we just, as much as we could, encourage time. My son had a birthday party in the ocean because we live by the sea. And so I rang a couple of his friends' mums and it was his 12th birthday. I said, so he'll be going for a surf at 11 o'clock at Freshwater Beach next Tuesday, just in case a couple of your sons happen to be going for a surf on Tuesday, because we were still allowed to surf and have outdoor exercise here. I could take my son to the beach for a surf. I just had to walk up and down the sand. I wasn't allowed to stop because I was exercising. And for me, giving them the space to be able to connect with their friends, because I know that is the most important thing. I have to protect their mental health and well-being through this, because we don't know how long it's going to last. And academically, they'll be fine. We can catch them up. That's secondary. It was their health and well-being. And my oldest son played, many of your listeners may be familiar with Fortnite. He did a lot of online gaming, but he laughed and he was playing with his friends. And I thought that is just, there was so many of my ideals about how they should be behaving were lost, because my focus was on keeping them connected and giving them that framework. And it was a decision that I made really early on, knowing how important, especially adolescence is for brain development.
Exactly.
We hear a lot about risk taking, or we hear a lot about emotion. Kids becoming very going into teenage years, and there's all this sort of, they become very emotionally turmoil, and there's this sort of storm of adolescence. Actually, the primary driver of the brain when it's going through adolescence is the development of the social brain networks. They just need the right kinds of social experiences. And exactly the same way a little baby's brain needs to hear language to be able to develop its language centers, and those kind of first couple of years of life, it requires language. When kids are young and they're going through their early teenage years, they require the right types of social experiences to wire up the social networks in the brain so they can form healthy relationships later. So for me, that was a real focus in terms of keeping my children sort of healthy and well this year. And fingers crossed, it's paid off.
Absolutely.
Except for the fact my 12-year-old doesn't really like to talk to me.
Which totally within the scope of reasonable normality. Yeah. It's totally okay.
I keep saying to him, you're completely developmentally normal, darling, and he doesn't like it when I say that.
Exactly. No kisses in public, Mom.
Or in private. No way.
Right,
exactly. Can't even get within 1.5 meters of him.
Right. It's just this small
socially
moment of time.
This is from his mother 24/7.
But I mean, look at this. This is a perfect example of you literally living exactly what you teach, right? Because you could easily be someone who knows all this information, but still says, screw all that. Even though I know that social connectivity is extremely important, I'm so overwhelmed with all the information that's going out about a virus that I'm going to strip them from any possibility of it, right?
Yeah. And I have friends who've done that with their kids. I saw that. I saw that happen. Yeah.
And that's tough. But, part of being able to be at the forefront of your expertise and the lane that you have chosen, or perhaps was chosen for you, but because it was your calling and what you felt very naturally poured towards, means that you're going to have to dig your heels into it and really embody the very lessons that you're teaching other people. And one of the places that people are not willing to touch is usually in their own household, when they're not quite ready to be honest about whether or not they believe the syrup that they're making, right? Like all the Kool-Aid, so to speak, the Kool-Aid that they're making, you're actually drinking it because you're doing it with your own kids, which I have to commend you for, because not a lot of people would. And you're saying, no, you know what? I value their brain developing
Mm,
well as I can possibly support them being
mm,
able to do,
mm,
as naturally as possible. So
mm, mm,
that speaks volumes,
mm. Well, thank you.
truly. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I have to ask you
Mm,
before we wrap up on anything, because there's so many questions that I have for you on so many levels. But my first most important one is because you are a brain guru, and I know everybody doesn't like that G word with guru, but for someone who's been
I'll own it.
right, like you've been studying it for over 2 decades, almost three
Yeah.
decades, why not? Sometimes because it's always the ones who know the most don't necessarily do the most because you know so much about the brain and what it does and how it affects your happiness. With all that Dr. Sarah McKay,
Mm.
how do you give yourself permission to pause?
I've got a few things in life that I love almost more than anything. My husband, my kids, my work, but I really love sleeping. I I probably almost do a bit too much of it. One might think I was lazy if they saw what goes on behind the scenes in my house. So I'm a regular strategic napper during the day. I have all up until I had my own business and I could make my own decisions. I always used to struggle when I got to about 2:30 in the afternoon with just trying to stay awake.
Mhm.
And through research and learning a little bit about how to nap in a way that was healthy and smart for my brain, realized that if I just gave myself permission to have a 20-minute nap mid-afternoon, if I felt that I was struggling to stay awake, the benefits would outweigh any loss of time. 20 minutes
Yeah.
is no big deal. So I'm a strategic napper in that I if I feel the urge in the mid-afternoon, I just give into it and I nap and I set my alarm for 23 minutes because it takes me about 3 minutes to fall asleep. And then I'll wake up and I feel emotion. And for me, a big part of it, especially when my children were young, was that it just gave me the ability to emotionally regulate. If those kind of rough edges that start emerging when you're a bit tired and cranky, a 20-minute nap meant I could handle anything. It was like a second day. And for me, that was really important for how I felt. I felt less cranky and it was kind of made motherhood easier, especially when my children were really young. And it's never disrupted my sleep at night. Interestingly, I have a bit of an obsession when I meet other strategic nappers, as I call myself, and people who nap strategically know exactly what I'm talking about with that. Not like having a 3-hour sleep in the afternoon, but going, right, I feel tired now, I'm going to lie down and sleep for a set amount of time. That means I have a lot of strong positive associations with sleep, and I sleep really well at night. So I'm often in bed by 9,
Mhm.
and I read fiction for an hour. So I'm quite like a police procedural. I think it just sort of takes me out of anything that's in my reality,
Yeah.
and I can usually smash out a good 8.5, 9 hours a night as well, and I don't wake up either.
Mhm.
Because I really like sleeping. And for me, if I don't get that, that's my time out. That's my downtime. That's my primary source of self-care. Because if I can do that, I can wake up early in the morning. I can be up at 6. I can watch the sunrise. That just sets me up for the rest of the day. So for me, that's my moment, my downtime, kind of my
Wow.
foundation for everything. And it sounds so kind of basic and cheesy, but I mean, the neuroscience backs that up, that sleep
Mhm.
is the foundation of all health. We don't appreciate it. We all know we're not meant to lie in bed at night and play with our mobile phones and whatnot. But for me, that's kind of core to what I do.
Yeah, it's your tonic.
Mm.
It's your elixir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. More than anything.
I love that. So what you'll find funny is this week, one of the posts that I shared on LinkedIn was about how 20-minute power naps,
Oh, is it a
increase your performance.
synchronicity?
Right, right. Like it was so, and I was like, and she had, for everyone listening, she had no idea that I shared that,
No,
everybody.
no. I have done a TEDx. Some people don't like it when you say TED Talk, a TEDx talk on the neurobiology of afternoon naps. So
Mhm.
this has been one of my kind of gigs for a while is napping.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know a lot of people suffer from insomnia or have sleep issues or struggle falling asleep or staying asleep, and there's a lot of reasons for that and approaches to it. Interestingly, to me, is this concept that people who strategically nap in the afternoons and never have trouble falling asleep at night. The key is to not nap long, because that disrupts all of your rhythms. But it's the love of sleep that helps. It's the, oh my God, I get to go and kind of allowing yourself to give in to that feeds forward to all-round good sleep. And so I don't know whether you could prescribe afternoon naps for people who feel a bit, struggle with insomnia. Like, that probably goes against any kind of sleep health guidelines. But I suspect it's that mindset. It's like, sleep.
Yeah, no, and you're 1,000% right. It's association, right? Like, if you have a negative association with resting because you haven't been able to rest, and maybe that's part of the anxiety of it, like, oh, I can't get sleep, so you're just resisting even falling. You know that it's such a tumult, or it has been such a tumultuous experience for you night after night, day after day, that resistance in and of itself is going to create.
And I have the busiest brain in the world. I can't even meditate or do any of that mindfulness meditation. So I cannot do that, but I can nap.
Right.
And so, and I think because I love sleep so much, it overrides the busy brain at night. Like, it just actually shuts up. So maybe that's why I like it, because I get a break from myself.
That is your meditating, though. There's people who need like Baroque music, like, listening to Bach or something to be able to get into theta.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just because you have a brilliant brain, that's all. So we'll totally go with that one. I do have a quick question before I ask you my next question, which is, you mentioned when you were saying, some of the challenges is when people sleep too long. What is too long? If they're power napping very strategically, just to kind of reboot themselves, what's too long?
Half an hour. Don't go longer than half an hour asleep time. Because then you fall into, so people might be familiar with the different stages of sleep. And if you sleep sort of 20, 25 minutes, you're really only moving through the first 1 or 2 stages of sleep. If you fall into deep sleep, stages 3 or 4, and that happens after about sort of 30, 45 minutes, then you feel awful when you wake up from that. So if you're in deep sleep and someone wakes you up, or an alarm wakes you up, you feel horrible. Whereas if you're still in light sleep, it's easy to come up and out of it. So one, you feel awful, so there's no benefit to, you don't get the upsides, you only get the downsides, and that can then have the knock-on effect of impacting your sleep that night. And you don't want to do that at all. You don't want it to disrupt your night sleep. It's really kind of almost, if you have a strategic nap, it's got nothing to do with night sleep. So if you just get those first couple of stages of sleep, and that happens within that first half hour, anything longer than that, you're starting to run into problems. And that's why people often say, I hate having naps because I always wake up feeling horrible. But that's probably because they sleep for an hour or maybe 2 hours. And that's not giving you the benefits, that's just giving you the downsides.
Right. You just want to sleep long enough to have a reboot.
Exactly. And you get all the benefits. You get the, as I say, you knock off the rough and emotional edges. It improves memory and learning. We have lots of evidence around that. And people often gain these, there's all these stories about these great creative minds and thinkers and inventors and artists who gain their creative insights in that kind of time, between sort of sleep and awake. You can solve a lot of problems, have, these insights and aha moments in that space as well. So it's kind of a fun little place to be.
Yeah, something to play with. So that's something that lots of people can do, is just play with a 20-minute reboot. If you need that 2 or 3 minutes to, that you need it just to kind of calm yourself into a space where you could actually even allow yourself to fall asleep. I like what you do, Dr. Sarah McKay, with adding that little extra 3 minutes to your timer.
That's because I don't need much encouragement. I don't think if you're not feeling sleepy, it's not going to work. I think that's the thing as well. Like, some people go, "Oh, wow, I never feel like it," and I go, "Well, can't do it then." It's just if you have that urge, you go, "Oh my God, I just need to have a little nap." Then just have a go and see what happens.
No, I absolutely love that. So how can people connect with you to learn more and to get your book and, do all the
Mm.
things?
Well, the easiest is just to come to my website. So Dr. Sarah McKay, or McKay, as you say, drsarahmckay.com. And you can find links to my book, and you can find links to my online training. I run professional training programs, CPD programs, and applied neuroscience. So what can we take from the lab and use wisely in your work? And I play around a little bit. I kind of have been going through a bit of a learning curve on Instagram. I thought maybe I might start dabbling in that, and it's quite fun because it's a really great place to be creative and share ideas. And on Instagram, again, I'm Dr. Sarah McKay, and other social, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. But if you go to drsarahmckay.com, you'll find all of the links out to social media, how to buy my book, how to join my courses there.
No, I love it. So I have to tease you really quick, and it's really teasing myself because I pronounce A's as ah as well. Like I say apple.
Yeah.
And people here in America tease me because they say apple.
Apple.
So I've tried, like apple, like A for A, and I make the ah sound. So I purposely, whenever I see an A, like in McKay, I try to say McKay, but I want to say McKay because that's my natural default. But I'm trying to correct myself.
It is Scottish. My grandparents were Scottish, so it is McKay, and that's how the Scots pronounce it. So, but
funny.
I sometimes just say McKay because at least the spelling is then obvious.
No, I love it. And I have to say,
my grandmother will be looking down from heaven at me going, no. It's
like,
McKay.
You're totally saying it right. It's McKay.
Doesn't matter too much.
No, I absolutely love it. And I know that I'm like 0.06 or 0.08% Scottish according to my ancestry.com.
Oh, cool.
So there you go. Some tiny little thing in there somewhere. It's buried under everything else. I'm like a little mud puppy. I appreciate you so much for being here and carving out time to just come and share with us and to teach us so much and to give us so much of your truth for how you fully live what you teach. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was an honor to be able to speak on your amazing podcast. I was so excited that I was going to get to talk to that amazing lady. So awesome. Thank you for having me.
I love it. Look, my kids have not called me cool or amazing in a long time, so it feels good to hear it.
That's how we all need to stick together, us mums.
Exactly. We have to. I really appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Balance Boldly podcast for ambitious women in business and a few brave men. If you are new to the podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, and share to help us ensure that the other ambitiously bold and brave have access to these valuable life, love, and business balance tools. If you are an avid listener and have been with us for a while, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are why we are voted number 8 out of the top 35 women in business podcasts for 2020. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing and continuing to share and DMing and writing emails and following up with our gracious experts who come and share their time with us. I really do appreciate all of you for that. Of course, if you want to connect with me, I'm Ask Naketa on all the places, Twitter, IG, Facebook, you name it. So always feel free to reach out and let me know what you think or who you want us to have on or what topic you want us to cover under the Balance Boldly moniker of everything we do here. If you have, for some reason, not picked up Selfish, my survival memoir and personal transformation story, make sure you go to Amazon or Barnes & Nobles or all the places because we're at 40,000 locations internationally, absolutely globally. So pick up Selfish, Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy as soon as you can, or gift it for a friend. If you already have the book, make sure you review it. Your reviews matter. I feel weird when I say that, but definitely your reviews matter. So please give your feedback on whatever platform you purchased the book because we do go back and read them. In the interim, I want you to go create your balance and create your joy, but remember, do it boldly. Thank you for listening.